And now here's part 2 of our episode.
All right, Ed, tell us, why is this the standout track for you?
If anyone listened to it, do I need to say much?
If you did your job right, then you should.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's so many different things about this song. Now, I got to throw a little multitude of Prince factoids out to explain it even, right? So Prince had an alter ego named Camille.
Mm-hmm.
There was going to be a whole album that was just going to be called Camille that was not going to be credited to Prince at all.
Right.
And we were talking about that this was eventually supposed to be a triple album, and he pulled material from multiple projects into this Sign of the Times double album. Anyway, so you have Prince in this sort of high-pitched voice. It's not his normal voice. It's high-pitched. And lyrically, I don't think you get a better Prince song. Like, you know, Prince is known for Let's Go Crazy and Purple Rain. They're all great tracks. I don't want to make it sound like they're not. But the things he comments about here, what he's exploring here, I think is so fascinating. Because the backstory here is he was dating, just to make this even more fun, he was engaged to Susanna Melvoin, who is Wendy Melvoin's not just sister, by the by, her twin sister.
Bold.
And he was like, how can I want to have the intimacy with you that you have with your sister.
Oh, God.
That was the inspiration for this track, right? So he's saying, like, there's these walls that are up when you're in this sort of this partnership, whatever. A lot of it could be gender-based or what we think of in terms of gender role at the time. And he's trying to flip that on his head. It's like, why can't you let me in like you let your girlfriend in? Or in this case, maybe more specifically, your twin sister in and what you share with her. Jesus, why can't I have that same level of intimacy that you have with her? So to me, that's just such a fascinating, and some of the lines he throws in there, right? And the music's great, like, because like it's so odd, like it's such an odd song, right? Like there's this slap bass that's just sitting there. Even though he has the high pitch voice, he also introduces a really low pitch voice. He makes it sound ominous, like. You can almost enter his mind about how he's struggling with this whole thing and how to work this through in his own mind to achieve this intimacy that he wants to achieve with this partner that he loves so much. And look, topping it all up, I mean, can you top anything better off than with an orgasm? Like basically a musical. I mean, that's the genius of this. It's a musical orgasm.
Okay, there's another 1,000,000 points.
Right? Like he builds up musically to this crescendo. And I remember the first time I heard this, and when everything drops out and it's just the drum, and he goes, we what does silence look like? We can imagine what silence that's such a that's such a provocative line in my own mind. Like to this day, like that to me, that's such an interesting thing. I think we all hopefully been there where we have this wonderful relationship and it's sexual, and then you have that moment after you're just so open, like at that point you're so open to the other person that you just want to talk about all these things, and I just think it's fascinating to end with what does silence look like, and then it ends on an odd beat. It doesn't even end clearly. So it's unresolved in my mind. Like I don't know if he's really achieved or able to achieve, and maybe it's an impossible task. But again, all this wraps up in my mind as it's an endlessly fascinating song, and it's also just solid musically. It's funky, it's weird, it has some weird flourishes. I just there's so much about it. I could go on. We could go like do 3 podcasts probably.
More episodes.
I hear you about that last line though, because it does sort of capture that feeling like that. After you've been intimate with someone. That silence exists, and you just sort of feel like if we could just live like this forever and not have to worry about anything and just be together. And that I felt like that line kind of captures that. So it's,
I like that interpretation. Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
But then also,
I think so.
But as a counterpoint to that, he does have the line about we don't have to make love to have an orgasm. Right. So it's sort of like there's this this event that we have placed such value on, and that it clearly does mean something on a biological and like sort of relational level, but also it is somewhat cheap, right? Like there's also like a cheapness to it. We're only imbuing that orgasm with value by us being together.
I remember listening to it the first time, and when we're going through that kind of story at the end, right? That encounter, and he says that line, if I was a naked, what if I danced a ballet? Would that get you off? And I remember hearing that line the first time, thinking, what a stupid line. But then he follows it with, well, tell me what will. Like,
Right.
so I'm like,
What's it gonna take?
He anticipated how I was going to think about the line before, and he responded to it right in real time, which is amazing.
So prescient. Okay, so let's talk about perfection, shall we? Because remind me, I think in our discussion with you before coming on, I think it was that you would have initially was Sign of the Times always going to be the one Prince album that you brought before us, or was it that you wanted to do Purple Rain and we had already done it? Remind me how that went.
No. Well, it's funny. It would have been Sign of the Times for sure. But I have to say, after doing the podcast with Jared and walking through the material chronologically, I had more affection again for Purple Rain.
Sure.
I became one of those fans who gets a little snobby about the big hit of the artist, right? You go like, everyone loves Purple Rain, meh. But when we went in and like dug deep, I was like, holy my God, this is the epic album. But no, Sign of the Times has always been the Prince album I've certainly played the most over all these years, for sure.
Okay, good. So with that, we have this thesis that we've been working on for almost 100 episodes. We're getting close to 100.
Oh, congrats! That's awesome.
Episodes. I think it'll happen sometime next calendar year, Michael. Right?
Yeah, sometime in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been chewing on this idea for a while, and we didn't ask you. We didn't give you any standards for what our idea of perfection is. So why was, when we asked you for a perfect album, why did Sign of the Times fit that bill? And kind of what standards were you using to assess it?
Very personal standards, of course. So excellent. I think the reason, there's a couple reasons. I think the album standalone, whenever it would have been released, if it had been released sometime later in my life or earlier in my life, I'm sure I would still have a lot of love for it. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned briefly, I happened to be a senior in high school at the time this came out. Ooh, so in my own mind, I'm thinking I'm maturing, I think. There's a sense, that's debatable. We get other people on the podcast to discuss that from that era. I'm sure there'll be different opinions about it. But generally, I felt like I was becoming an adult and growing up. Yeah. And for as much as I loved Prince, there were certain things that he would do in his material that I thought were a little silly and a little like almost embarrassing when I would listen to it. I'd be afraid to play it for certain people unless they were like a real Prince fan. This album comes out and I'm ready to graduate high school and go to college and to be a grown-up. And I felt like when I listened to the lyrics on this album, I'm like, oh my God, Prince is so insightful here that I've never heard him write lyrics like this before. Like this song, I don't know how much you guys were digging into the album, but Strange Relationship, which follows, is another one where the lyrics are just so interesting. And the Adore track, which is what the album closes on, is his best ballad by far in my mind. Like you can just sense that this is someone who's truly fully in love with someone. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Like I think like any good Prince album, this offers such a buffet of musical styles, but he's never hit it track after track after track for a double album, guys. Like a double album. If this was an 8-song suite, I'd be like, wow. But this is a double album of material where where Jared and I had the hardest time saying, like, we always prompt each other, which song would you take off the album of any of Prince albums? And it was like, how in the hell do I take a song off this album?
Yeah, I'm not sure how.
Yeah, because it's just so good. It's such a wonder because, again, like we were talking about multiple times already, this wasn't like he sat down and said, here's the project I want to put together. Like he just pulled music from like 3 or 4 different projects to assemble this double album, and it just seems to work so well. And for me, perfection, you put it on, you don't need to skip anything.
Okay.
No skips. I think as you're hearing me discuss that one track, it is almost 40 years later, and I'm still trying to figure out when I was your girlfriend. I can go back and listen to the material.
You can chew on it over and over again.
It's just endlessly interesting. It's not like, oh, I heard it once and I love it, and that's fine. There's a place for that, right? You just love the one song. It doesn't even need to mean anything. It just gets you moving and it makes you feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But this does that. The music does that. It makes me want to dance. It makes me want to cry. It makes me think. It makes me reconsider how I am in relationships. It gives me some view into what real love may feel like. In the track Forever in My Life, which was another one that was in the running for my favorite like track to talk about.
Yeah.
That's like the song to me. That lyrics is like how I hope I would feel if I met the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
So like it's just, and like I said, this coming out when I was a senior, I just felt like Prince and I intersected in a way where I was like, I'm maturing and his lyrics have matured into a degree that I never thought they could. And it just felt perfect to me.
I listened to your and Jared's. You did 2 episodes to cover this, rightfully so, because it's a double album. And I think it might have been one of the reviews that you quoted talked about it being like the best Prince mixtape ever, because it's just like all the tracks. Yeah, you're right. Like it maybe doesn't necessarily feel like it's one project that he had set out to make, which obviously it wasn't, but like even though it feels like a bunch of stuff pulled together, it's like he made this for us. He's like, hey, I have these tracks that I feel like you all need to hear right now, and I'm going to sequence it perfectly and give it to you. And in your case, it was actually cassette form.
Yes, it was. It was a mixtape in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that review. I remember Rolling Stone. I remember picking up a Rolling Stone at some store around that time because I was so excited to hear what people, because I just knew it was such a good album. I just knew it. Like I just knew this was something that, like, there was times I would listen to get Prince material, get like Parade, the album Parade, or Around the World in a Day, and I knew there were songs that were so weird people were just gonna be like, what the hell is this song?
Yeah.
The first time I heard, I'm like, I want everybody I know. Like I was an evangelist around this album. I'm like, everybody needs to hear this album. That's how good this album is. And I have to say, as much as a huge Prince fan I am, Purple Rain probably being the only other one I would say. Well, 19. See how we can do. We get off track. 1999. But this is one where I want to get this in front of people, and it was always such a fun thing when I would encounter someone who was like, "Oh, Prince sucks," and blah blah blah. I'm like, "Well, what music do you like?" "Oh, I like kind of guitar music." "Okay, I'm gonna put on Never Take the Place of Your Man, and you tell me if you like that." "Oh, I don't like Prince, whatever. What kind of music? Like, I like ballads." Like, I'm gonna put on Adore, and you're gonna tell like almost anybody could throw me a genre of music that they liked and they were dissing Prince about. I could grab one track from this album, put it in front of them, and they'd say, "Oh my God, that's really good." You take something like a Camille album, which is again the high pitched voice version of Prince, and somehow you put it side by side with Prince singing like Prince, and it still works. Like you're not like, what's this other song with the weird high pitched voice? You're like Housequake, which is such an odd, funky, crazy, awesome rap kind of song thing, and it somehow works. Like that works alongside with the Ballad of Dorothy Parker, alongside they're all interesting tracks, and they're there's some similarities because he was using the Lindrum into drum programming and stuff. So there's a certain sound. That's the one thing I would say. Like it is sounding because of the drum programming, like a little David,
Sure.
to me because of the drum programming that it was being used at the time. But you can't argue with just the foundation. Those songs are just so well written, and the lyrics. He's never presented a suite of lyrics better than he did in Sign of the Times.
I would also say this one, I do not think we do not get Blonde by Frank Ocean without this album.
It's funny you bring that up because I was lucky when I was over teaching English in Korea for a couple of years, and believe it or not, James Brown played in Seoul. So
sweet.
Okay.
Right before he passed away. I mean, we're talking like maybe a year before he passed away. So I went and saw him, and I'm watching him, and I'm like, oh wow, that's where Prince got that.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, I'm back in Philly. I'm up at the Keswick. D'Angelo's playing.
Oh yeah, come on.
And D'Angelo's doing his stuff, and I'm like, he got that from Prince. And there was just this thought that swept through me, thinking, there's probably some kid out here in this audience who's going to be up on that stage some point, furthering that torch, furthering that thought and that musical legacy or that thread out. And it just made me feel so happy because I was just like, to see that lineage is just made me so happy to see those musical ideas will keep moving forward with new people and with different twists. And it just I don't know, there's something about that we rarely get to words of forever, but there was a forever element to that made me very ecstatic.
Forever element. You get 3 million points for forever element.
Points, tracking, noted.
Well, Ed, we've allowed you to bring before us an album by an artist that we have already covered. You should know that this comes with, there's an additional requirement when someone does this, and that is that we must subject you to our best out of 11 trivia.
Okay, sounds good.
So I've got 11 trivia questions here for you. All you have to do is get, best out of 11. Though I'm going to challenge. I'm going to see if maybe you can go 11 for 11 on this here. You are you're a knowledgeable fellow. I think you might have a good shot at this.
I'm nervous a little bit. Let's see.
Okay. Well, I start easy. It starts easy. Okay. We ready?
Yep.
Number one. What was Prince's legal name?
Prince Rogers Nelson.
Correct. 1 for 1. What was the name of the band Prince formed when he was just 14 years old?
I don't know this one, I don't think.
I'll give you a hint. It's the name of a train station.
Central something?
It's Grand Central.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
Grand Central. Okay, that's okay. One thus far. Okay. Prince was known for his complex legal battles with record labels. In 1993, he changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol as a form of protest against Warner Brothers Records. What was the official name given to this symbol?
The artist formerly known as Prince?
Yeah, we'd accept that. We'd also accept the love symbol, I guess.
Oh, yeah, love symbol as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we accept that.
We'll accept that. Yeah.
So, okay. Fourth question. What did the symbol represent?
Oh, that's a good one. I believe he described it so many different ways, but I think it was the sort of the combination of the male and female symbols put together.
Ding, ding, ding.
Correct. Okay, now we get some multi-part questions here. Prince wrote hit songs for other artists, including the Bangles, Sinead O'Connor, and Shaka Khan. Name the most well-known songs he wrote for each of those artists.
Oh, sure. So Sinead was Nothing Compares to You.
Yup.
Excuse me. Bangles was Manic Monday.
Yep.
Shaka Khan was I Feel For You.
Boom.
Yes.
Wow, with such confidence.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, now we get a little trickier here. What 2 songs did Prince record with Ani DeFranco in 1999?
Oh man. I should know one. I don't know if there must be one on her album, which I probably don't know. He did Raven to the Joy Fantastic. What song did she play on? This is going to kill me because I should know this. I should know this one. I know it's on that album. I just can't think of which track it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I Love You, But I Don't Trust You Anymore, is it?
That's correct.
Oh,
yep.
okay.
Do you know the Ani one?
No, I don't. What's that? I'm going to write that down because I don't know what it is.
Well, my follow-up question was going to be what albums were those songs on? So obviously you got Raven to the Joy Fantastic. He performed on the song Providence on Ani DeFranco's album To the Teeth.
Okay, I'm writing that down because I've not heard that.
Which is a fantastic album, especially with you as a Prince fan. If you're going to listen to an Ani DeFranco album, listen to the Teeth.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, getting more specific to the album now. What was the title of the album that Prince recorded in 1986, which was intended to be released under the pseudonym Camille and featured him singing in a higher-pitched voice?
I thought it was just called Camille. It's not called the Camille.
It's an album he released later. But it was originally intended to be released in 1986.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Oh, so he had an album called The Black Album. Is that what you're talking about?
Boom,
okay.
You got it.
Got it.
He's hit 6, right, Tyler? We've got 6 correct at this point.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes.
Okay. So now this is all just extra frosting on your cupcake here.
Yeah. So you got your best out of 11. There you go.
Yay! Pressure's off. I was getting nervous there. Okay.
Which song from the album Sign of the Times features a drum pattern famously sampled by artists such as the Beastie Boys and MC Hammer? You mentioned it.
Yeah, you did.
I mentioned several songs. Housequake.
There you go. You got it. Yeah. The song "It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night" features a live recording of a concert. Where was this concert recorded?
Paris, France.
Wow. Do you know the name of the venue by any chance?
I don't.
Okay. It's Le Zénith or the Zenith if you're not French
cool.
speaking.
I don't know. That's a little factoid I didn't know.
We'll count
So
that.
now, okay, here's my favorite question. And I don't know. I think you might actually know this, but this is the hardest question, I think.
Okay.
Sign of the Times was originally going to be a 3 LP release called Crystal Ball. When the bigwigs refused to release it, he cut 7 tracks. Name them.
Michael is, I don't know if you knew this, Michael is a bad man.
Wow, that's rough, man. There's a song called Crystal Ball, so I know that's gone.
There's one.
Oh God, what was not included in the album? I think did all these get released at some point? Crystal Ball.
I think they did. I think they've all been released. Yeah.
Oh geez. What's the song he did for the one album soundtrack? The Michael J. Fox movie from the 90s. I think that had a Good Love.
Yes.
Good Love
there we go.
Yep.
Good Love was in there. Rebirth of the Flesh.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, that's 3, right? You said how
Yep.
many? 7?
Seven.
Torture me, Mike. Come on, man.
So
You
bad.
got 3 of them.
If you got one more, if you got one more, then we'll count it.
Really?
If you got one more, then we'll count it, because then that's best out of 7, right?
Yeah. There you go.
You got 3. So if you give us a 4th,
Get
we'll
one more.
Was Rock Hard in a Funky Place part of the configure? Okay.
Yep.
Sure
there
was.
you go.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding.
What were the other ones?
The other 3 were The Ball,
Oh,
Joy and Repetition,
well, such a good track by the by, folks.
and Shockadelica.
Oh, Shockadelica is a great. That ended up being a B-side. That's a great track too.
So that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If my math is correct, that's 9 out of 11.
Yeah, and that's better than
pretty damn good.
our previous guest who we made do trivia. So you're I
appreciate that. There's a funny quick story about Shockadelica. This is how Prince was a genius, but also could throw some shade, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this already, but there's The Time, the band The Time. Their guitarist's name was Jesse Johnson, and he had a solo career as well. I actually like some of his albums from the 80s. He actually had an album called Shockadelica. So Prince heard the title of the album, was like, the title's so good, why would you not write a song called Shockadelica? So he quickly wrote a song called Shockadelica and had a Minneapolis radio station play it in tribute and give it dedicated to Jesse Johnson. That song's, I don't know if you guys have ever heard a song. You should give it a listen. It's really good. Prince did it as almost like a joke to be like, why wouldn't you write a song called Shockadelica? And he just wrote the song Shockadelica. It's crazy.
That's infuriating. That he can
just I couldn't imagine being in his inner circle as another musician. You just be like, oh my, forget about it.
Didn't Susan, the producer, didn't she say that it felt like he kind of sneezed these songs out during the process? Wasn't that the verb that she used?
Yeah, I'm sure she has. I mean, there was a period where he really was, and it's not overstating. He was doing like a song a day.
Insane.
And he was just someone who was, for as much as they say he was a perfectionist, and I think there was certain that element to him, but he was very much, and I'm sure there's so many other artists who feel this way too. I'm too lazy to feel this way, and I don't certainly not have the talents he has. But anyway, he's like, once you have that inspiration, you work it through till you're finished and it's over. He would spend 20, 24, 30 hours in the studio straight just to get the song finished, to have it in the can.
Yeah.
Because he's like, do it while you're inspired and don't do a piece of it and get back to it later. Just finish it.
Yeah. What is that thing about inspiration and perspiration? He had both.
Equal parts, not 99 and 1. It's 50.
I think it's equal. I think when you go by the Prince formula, it's equal parts inspiration and perspiration.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, Ed, we would be very pleased to talk to you for 100 more episodes about Prince, and I wish you and Jared 100 more, many more episodes of Prince.
Thank you,
because it's a great pod and everyone should listen to it. But we have very serious business. We got to take a look at these points that I gave you on the board and see if your case cuts the mustard for this album to be included in the Pantheon. So, going from the most recent points that I gave you 3 million points for the forever element of a perfect album, of a perfect song. Boom. I'll also make note of the fact that you said there were no skips on this album and how that was important to you with the perfect album, and that it must be endlessly interesting, endlessly chewable. There were 1 million more points for If I Was Your Girlfriend being a musical orgasm. I think that's a really well-made point. Yep. 1 million points for your discovery of this album happening on Easter Sunday, which is so sacrilegious and fitting. I love it. It's delicious. I gave you 50,000 points for ripping the audio from the concert film VHS and being a true nerd, that we respect that level of dedication so that you could experience the arrangements from the concert film. 30,000 points for Prince being a way of you finding your people in the sticks of PA. Which, when you live outside of the cities, you got to find your people. It's very, very important.
Yep.
10,000 points for being a karaoke whore. Nothing wrong with that. Sex work is real work.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
7,000 points for You May Be Right being the song that you sang while your mom scrubbed the gravel out of your hand, because that's an underrated Billy Joel song. And I also had a great love for Billy Joel in my formative years. And he's still kicking. So I want to just shout out Billy Joel real quick.
Nice. Good.
Good. Add that to I gave your summation of ChatGPT's job summing up Prince. I gave it felt like about an 80%, right? Or maybe like 77, something like that. But they did fine. All of that very positive, and the only thing that worked against your case was the pun was the pun that ChatGPT included of Noam Chomsky.
Okay. In ChatGPT's defense, I came up with that pun, and so it's just me being dad over here. So
fair enough. So in spite of the 3,000 points that I docked for Michael's terrible pun, I think this is looking like a pretty strong board. And again, we wouldn't let Prince come back before the tribunal if we didn't think there was a strong case to be made for this album. But if you've listened to the pod before, then you know that the decision really comes down to one man. One might say he's the Prince of 60-second intros. It's down to Michael. Right. Michael, how did Ed do with the case that he built?
Oh, boy.
Tell us. Is Sign of the Times by Prince a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
So I have to say that I really locked into you referring it to as endlessly chewable, which reminded me of getting Charleston Chews at Halloween and like how those were also endlessly chewable. And so the idea of thinking of Prince's Sign of the Times as the Charleston Chew of musical recordings in my brain, that means, yeah, it's perfect. It goes to 11.
Yes.
All right. I love it. Charleston Chew of recording.
kind of a dad candy too, Michael.
Yeah.
You just got to say.
I'm embracing it. I
love it. Woo, well, I feel that's a load off my shoulders right there, folks. I was feeling a little nervous.
Okay.
Hell of a case.
Thank you.
So we also it was a hell of a task, just in the sense that it was a hell of a task for you to choose a standout track from this album. It was kind of hard for us to do it as well. You know, there's a case to be made for pretty much every song, which when a good album comes before us, that's how we hope the case to be. But we actually decided that we weren't going to choose one beforehand. I kind of threw a few into the chat. We have a Slack. We have this one goes to 11 Slack. Maybe someday there'll be other people in that Slack. It's a really fun place to be. So you'd love some of the conversation that happens in there. But we decided that we'd let this conversation guide what we chose as our standout. So, Michael, why don't you share what impressions you have based on the conversation? Are you leaning towards something right now for our standout?
Man, I mean, I'm still not really leaning any certain way or the other. I mean, okay, here's what I will say. Yeah, I love the idea of playing us out on Play in the Sunshine because it's such a joyous track, and I feel like we could use more joy in our lives. Yep. The title track is pretty epic, and I think
lead single too, right? So
yeah, it will be a good contrast to the track we've already listened to. Mm-hmm. I like You Got the Look because I do love Sheena Easton, and she can do no wrong. But also, like Ed mentioned, a couple tracks that I know are two of his favorites. The end for each of the discs. So Tyler, I do not know. So yeah. I'm going to leave it to you, Tyler. You're going to make the call.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I'll call out that I think Forever in My Life and Adore are two excellent. There's a case to be made particularly for those two. And I think when we're talking about construction and sequencing, they come at just the right points, which are that gives them points in their favor. But I also felt like Playing the Sunshine. I think that was kind of the one. I didn't mention it before, but I think if we're talking about Prince and we're talking about like the energy that he brings to his performances, to the records that he made, I think there's a lot of times there's a dark energy that I think can be perceived of him, but I think there's equal parts joy in there too, and I want to highlight that as well. So I think Playing the Sunshine, I think it's what we're going to go with today.
I love it, and it's maybe never been done before. I'm going to give you 30 million points for that selection. To be very honest with you guys, I'm not just doing this to kiss some butt, but when Jared and I did, well, you said it sounds like maybe you did hear the pod, but when we picked our favorite song, that's the song I picked.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that. And I remember Jared being surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It's funny. Tyler, you really mentioned something that I find very interesting about this album and how people, the press or media or critics talk about it. Sign of the Times, that, talking about all the AIDS and, all these things that were going on in the 80s that were kind of like difficult and all that stuff. That's just one song on that album. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But because it's this title track and first song, people really kind of gravitate to that. There's no other mention of that and the rest of the songs. Like there's no other. It's not like you're getting political song after political song, or there's even a second or third one. It's really just that song, and which is really interesting. Like you said, the way he sequenced it, he opens with Sign of the Times. The track you picked is number 2. So I agree with you. I agree with your thesis. I think Prince did that. If you listen to 1999, he would talk about, man, there's all these troubles, but you know what? And that was maybe argument can be made. It's very simplistic, but end of the day, let's just enjoy life and have fun. Yeah. That really was his mode. It really was across his full career.
Ed, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad we were able to complete. Now we have the whole When Doves podcast set. Collect all two.
You do. You do. It's been nothing but absolutely joy and pleasure to be with you two today. I really had such a great time. So I really appreciate you inviting me on the pod.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hope to see you in person sometime very soon.
I love that. That would be great.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.